Dyeing yarn is super easy. Today, I'm going to hold your hand and I'm going to walk you through the steps. We're talking about procion dyes or fiber reactive dyes. So today I'm going to show you how to dye tencel. It could be cotton, it could be linen, it could be hemp. It's all going to be the same process. The only step I'm going to skip is the very first step. And the first step is to wash your fiber. So that's also called scouring. So normally if I'm scouring, I like to just boil my yarn in some water with some Blue Dawn, and that gets out all the oils, anything that comes out of the factory on your yarn, which surprisingly is often a lot. I happen to have used this tencel extensively, and I know for a fact that nothing comes out of it. It boils clean. So I'm going to skip the scouring step. But if you don't know your yarn, always scour. You want to make sure it's really nice and clean, or you will get inconsistent results. You will get spots where the dye doesn't adhere. It'll resist the dye. It'll just be splotchy. It won't necessarily be nice. And if you're going to all the trouble, take that one extra step and make sure it's going to be nice. That's the first step. The second step is you need to soak your yarn in soda ash. There's a lot of different ways that people can do this. You don't absolutely have to pre-soak it, but we're going to go with my way today. So this is the way I do it. I have a soda ash soak bath ready to go. You can also mix your soda ash with water, the powder, and make just a small amount and soak your yarn in that. You don't, obviously, if you're working in your kitchen, you're not going to have a big, huge bath full of soda ash solution. And the reason that this step is important is if you skip this step, this is one of the only steps. If you skip it, you will fail. The project will not work out, the dye will wash out. This is the very most important step, is the soda ash. The soda ash, I actually myself buy from Walmart or Canadian Tire. I'm Canadian. It's pH plus. It's the exact same chemical. You do not need to buy it from your dye company. You can just buy it from wherever you buy pool supplies. It's easy to come by and it's inexpensive. Fiber reactive dyes are really fun to work with. They're super safe. Once the dye is on your fabric or your yarn, whatever it is you're dyeing, and bonded and rinsed properly, the color will never fade. It won't bleed. You can wash your colors with your bright whites. You're going to be fine. Fiber reactive dyes are perfect for natural fibers. So cottons, hemps, linens, but also wool and silk can be dyed with fiber reactive. Usually we tend to go towards acid dyes on those, but you don't need to. These work really well. And what I like about using fiber reactive dyes as opposed to natural dyes, not to put down natural dyes, but you need mordants, and sometimes those mordants aren't all that safe. Fiber reactive dyes are super safe. I've used them dyeing baby wraps. I buy my dyes from Dharma Trading, and they're in California. I'm in Canada, but I really like their dyes. They have beautiful colors, they have good customer service, and it's a company that have a lot of education on their website, which I really appreciate. That's basically how I learned to do my dyeing, is I read through their tutorials, read through their explanations, and I just kept trying things. I kept doing different things. I'd experiment, tweak, and I've come up with my own system, which is basically what I learned from them. Maybe I just do it a little differently. I'm just going to take my tencel, I'm going to pop it in my soda ash bath, and it doesn't need to sit there for long. You do want to make sure that it has a chance to fully saturate your fabric or your yarn. So if your yarn, I guess you just get a feel for it. I happen to know for a fact, because I've done this many times, that the tencel absorbs very, very, very quickly. You can kind of tell based on how it soaks into the water. If it absorbs it really quickly and sinks, you know it's probably ready. So then I take it out and I'm going to run it through my spinner to spin out any excess. Now you can leave your yarn to dry. It's going to be completely fine as long as it's had that soda ash bath. That will alter the pH level of the yarn. That's what soda ash does, is it changes the pH level. And that's the most important part. I've said this before. So once you've spun that out, you're going to mix your dyes. You can also mix your dyes while your yarn is soaking in the soda ash. Mix your dyes up. So the rule of thumb is 2 teaspoons of dye to 1 cup of water, and usually 1 cup of water per 1 pound of yarn. So that's just kind of easy math. You can figure out approximately how much you need, or it doesn't need to be rocket science, and you can just mix up a cup of yarn, of dye. So you can mix up different colors and do different color palettes. I'm going to do a few different colors on here today, and we'll see how it works out. I'm going to do a super quick method, which usually works really well with tencel. I'm just going to put the dye on the tencel, and then I'm going to let the tencel sit while I dye some wool, and then I'm going to come back and rinse out the tencel. Ideally, in a perfect world, you let it sit for 24 hours. I don't ever find that to be necessary, though. I don't know that I've ever unless it's been, I've forgotten about it, or I dyed on a Friday afternoon, didn't get back to it till Monday. It's the only time I've ever let it sit more than probably, normally what I have done for many years is I dye it late in the afternoon and rinse it first thing in the morning. That's just sort of the last thing I do before I leave my studio. And then in the morning, first thing I do is rinse it out. But I know that tencel happens to dye very, very quickly. So we're going to see how it goes today. I think it's going to happen super fast. And during the time that I'm dyeing the wool, it should have enough time to completely absorb the dyes. So I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of Amber Waves. I don't need much, so I'm going to do 1 teaspoon and 1/2 cup of water. It does get a little lumpy. You want to make sure you get your lumps out. In theory, I should have put a little bit of water in here, but I know that this one gets pretty well mixed. Sometimes I use an immersion blender to help get this a little better. Some colors don't mix very well at all, like reds. I always use an immersion blender when blending reds. And of course, that's dedicated to my studio. I don't reuse that on food or in my kitchen in any way, shape, or form. In fact, all the tools I use here are dedicated to my dyeing. I don't like to use the same, measuring cup that I use for dyeing in my kitchen. And I had previously mixed up a little bit of lime squeeze and a little bit of Kingfisher. You can just pour a little bit in. Just pour it however you like. If you wanted it to be all the same color, you could just fully saturate it. Add a little lime squeeze. Give it a little shake. I mixed this up a while back. Whoops. A little sprayed out. Oh my goodness. It's really full. Use my finger to stop it from coming out so quickly. See, this is more like free form dyeing. You just sort of don't get too crazy about how it is. That's how I like to roll. Just go with what's working. I just like to, I don't want it to be too curated where I know exactly how it's going to turn out. Just kind of use some different colors I like. And if you want white spots, then don't fill up all the spaces. What happens is white spots typically will happen anyways if you're not careful. So I'm going to try and get very few or not even any white spots. So I'm going to squish this, make sure it's well saturated. There's a white spot there. I'm probably going to add a little more dye to that. See, so you can get really precise or you can be loosey-goosey like I'm being here. I'm going to add a little bit of this to there. Kind of like the organic feel, but you know what? Sometimes I can't do organic and I need to be precise. Typically, I'm going to flip these over, make sure the back side's fully saturated. All right, there we go. So we're going to leave this. I'm going to tidy this mess up. Okay, now we're going to move over to some wool. And again, the step I'm going to skip is the scouring or the cleaning step. I know that my wool is very clean. I'm not super familiar with I haven't used a ton of wools. My wools always come clean. If you have wool that's got lanolin in it or other, debris, whatnot, you would use your normal techniques to clean your wool. So do that, and then I'm going to soak it in a solution of 1 part vinegar, 3 parts water. and just soak that in there until it's all thoroughly absorbed. And you can see with wool when it's fully absorbed. And then you're going to remove the wool and you're going to gently squeeze it out. You don't want to felt your wool, so we just squeeze gently and get the water out. Now, there's different ways again, but I'm just going to show you one of the methods I use. This is a super, super fast method that works. You're going to see it's almost shocking how well it works. So we're just going to lay it in a glass tray. You don't want to use a metal tray. You can use stainless steel, but stainless steel or glass is sort of the only two I consider using. So I'm going to put it in a glass tray and I'm going to put different colored dyes. You can use it mixed the exact same way as you did for your tencel, but I need you to know that dye takes differently on wool. And you know what? I'm just going to show you an example. Here's an example of me using full strength dye, the 2 teaspoons per 1 cup of water. And then I'll do an example where I use it half of that strength. See how it doesn't even go through? It's dyed just on that top layer. So you can actually use it a lot more diluted. And you can see how it strikes differently. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use different colors and then I'm going to rinse it out. I didn't mention, but this is a super wash. So while I was being gentle, I probably would have been more gentle if it were not super wash. Okay, so the yarns are done. I was probably in my studio for 30 minutes and I was recording during that time as well. So these are still damp, but they are completely ready. They just need to be dried. So here we have the first one. This is actually the second one. This is the Cashmere Merino Stellina. You can see here that we did get nice color. There's lots of beautiful color in here. It's mixed up. It's just how I wanted it. And, you know, it took just a few minutes, like barely any time at all. I would say this from start to finish, maximum was 10 minutes, probably less. Now, in fairness, I didn't re-dye. I only mixed the gold dye and the rest were already in my stash. Now, I had mixed the other 2 dyes up in June. So they're a few months old to be sure, but as you see, I mean, there's no issue with strength. They take the color really quickly and really well. Okay, now we're going to look at the tencel. Okay, the tencel is a different story. Again, it's still very, very, I mean, it's as dry as my spinner can get it. So the colors, the gold, which was mixed fresh today, took really well. And the other 2 colors that are older did not. Now, was that because I only left them sit for 10 minutes? Probably with them being older, had I let them sit for more than 10 minutes, had I let them sit overnight, they probably would be much darker like this, right? These were dyed with the same dyes. Now, had I used brand new fresh dye and just mixed it up, it probably would have been more vibrant. However, some colors just don't dye as vibrantly as other colors in a short period of time. Like some colors take really quickly and other colors just take longer. Anyways, this can be over dyed or it cannot. You know, it's easy. I can easily over dye it. I would just soak it back in the soda ash for a few minutes or a few seconds, as I mentioned, and just put some more dye on and leave it sit for a few hours or overnight. But it got a bit of color, not a lot. The gold came out nice. Okay, so that's how we use fiber reactive dyes. I hope you got something out of today's video. I would be happy to help you with other dyeing techniques. I have dyed, actually, I should have mentioned this earlier, I have dyed enough thread yarn to go around the earth 50 times. Actually, it was like 53-ish times. So I've dyed a lot of yarn. It usually turns out better than this one. Anyways, if you want to learn some different techniques, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to help you out. And if you like this video, please be sure to check out this one or this one. I'll meet you there. Bye for now.